Welcome to the Firehouse Roundtable podcast, brought to you by the Ventura Fire Foundation. I'm one of your hosts, Peter McKenzie, retired fire captain with the City of Ventura Fire Department, and my co-host, Jason Kay, active battalion chief with the City of Ventura Fire Department. We are going to bring awareness to real issues that face firefighters and their families. We want you to feel like you have a seat at the kitchen table, which every firefighter knows is the heart of the firehouse. Let's get right into the episode.
Hi, this is Joe from Ventura Fire Foundation. Thank you for listening to the podcast. I want to do a quick plug for the September 11th Memorial Stair Climb, this year being held on September the 7th. We're looking for climbers, sponsors, volunteers. If you want to sign up for any or all of those things, you can go to our website, venturafirefoundation.org, or click the link in the show notes. And please remember to subscribe and review the show. It really helps us to build our audience. Thanks so much.
All right, welcome to the Firehouse Roundtable. I am here with a repeat host, and I mean, wow, she came on the show, and I was like, this chick takes my breath away. So welcome back, my co-host, my wife, Stephanie.
Hello.
She's waving at the microphone. That's why I love her. So just so you guys know, she is saying hi. So joining us today, I'm excited about this podcast today, is Destiny Morris. And we're going to specifically talk about the transition from being at the firehouse or being on a fire to coming back home, and how that relates to families and wives, and how kind of to make that back into the house transition, and the best way to do that and care for both sides of that as the first responder and as the wife. So Destiny Morris, welcome. And why don't you give a little bio about yourself, who you are, where you came from, and why you got into this field?
Of course. Destiny Morris. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist, and I specifically specialize in first responders and their families, as well as trauma as kind of an umbrella over that. I am in Santa Barbara County. My practice is virtual, though, so anybody in the state of California can see me. Throughout being licensed, I have had first responder partner groups for 3 years. I have created a course specifically for first responder partners, and I help support first responders daily in my practice as I see them as clients.
So why did you pick first responders? How did that come into your brain?
Yeah, my dad is a first responder. He worked for the sheriff department. And then when I was in grad school, I was in a relationship with a firefighter for a few years. Not in that relationship anymore, but that kind of piqued my interest. I worked in a mental hospital in Ventura County. And in that mental hospital, I can't even tell you how many first responders I would see getting thrown in there with the general public. It was very concerning for me. Not just as someone that grew up in a first responder house, but also as a clinician to see them treated the same. And so that is kind of when I went into my own clinical specialization, where I got certified as a first responder therapist. And then I was trained in EMDR from there to treat trauma as well.
Yeah, EMDR has been a hot topic lately for the first responders, and I love it. I think it's super helpful. Can you give me exactly, or specifically, I should say, what it is you do differently to specialize with first responder therapy?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a lot, actually. So my whole practice has always been first responders, so I'm kind of like the fish in the water. I can kind of, say what pulls me apart, but it's been what I've known, especially as someone that's grown up in that culture. I'm what I would call culturally competent. I'm sure that word has been thrown around a lot. You've heard it. So I have the lived-in experience of what it's like to be a partner of a first responder, as well as a daughter of a first responder. And then clinically, on top of that, the training that I've done has helped me to understand first responders. When first responders see me, they don't need to be worried about filtering the information that they bring here. They know that they can be understood and supported where they're at. I'm not going to see a couple of a first responder and go, oh, well, why don't you just spend some more time together? I know the ins and outs of the relationships. I've been doing this for a while. And I think that is probably one of the biggest things and the most important things when looking for a therapist as a first responder.
Yeah, I totally agree. That sounds great. So let's kind of get into the episode. One of the reasons I asked to have Steph as my co-host today is because we've been through therapy throughout our, I better get this right, 23-year marriage. Awesome. And we've been through all sides of coming home and having issues with reintegrating back into my family, and with Steph going, I need some help. You're home now. Give me help, and all of that stuff. So we're here as some experienced couple, and we'd love to have other couples. If you have any questions of us, we're always open to either sending you to who we've had good luck with, because we've been through some terrible therapists as well, and we're glad we're able to come out on the other side. And I think Steph and I are doing really well now, because of some therapy we've been through, and because we get to have you on, Destiny. So this looks like a free therapy session for us. So why don't you go ahead and we'll start into, I don't know if there's somewhere you want to start, or I can kind of guide you to, let's just start from a regular 1 to 2 to maybe 3-day shift, and then walking in the door when you have, most of the time it's little kids, and then maybe what that looks like as they get a little bit older, or as the couple gets older. So I don't want to lead you too far in too many different ways, but go ahead and start on that.
No, that's perfect. And this is a hot topic that I see in couples therapy, and also for individuals, whether it be the firefighter themselves or the spouse that I'm seeing for therapy. So I love that you guys have that background of doing therapy, and there, unfortunately, are some bad therapists out there. So I'm glad that you made it through to the other side and didn't quit. So I think a good place to start is by talking about hypervigilance. I don't know if that's something that's been talked about on this podcast a lot. If it is, I won't go too far into it. But hypervigilance is a state of awareness that a lot of first responders, well, I would say all first responders, have to be in order to keep themselves safe in the job that they do, physically, but also mentally. So I like to picture it. I'm very image oriented. I like to come up with different pictures. It helps me and also my clients to understand things. I picture it like a switch on the inside of you. And the first responder has this switch when they're at work. It's switched on, and they are very hypervigilant. They compartmentalize. That's also a really big part of it. They compartmentalize their emotions and their personal feelings in order to do the job that is in front of them without personalizing it. That is huge. You know that. If you personalize the job, then you're going to get in the way, right? It's not going to be good for you. So hypervigilance switches on. When you get home, you have to be able to turn the hypervigilance switch off. And a lot of first responders really struggle with this because they feel like it's not something that's taught. I don't know if that's something that was that something that was taught to you?
No. And this is actually not something that I've come across very much with the word hypervigilance and what that means as a first responder. But what you're saying is super relatable. So go ahead.
Yeah, it's a heightened state of awareness. You're watching your back, you're listening. It's more heightened. Your visual is more heightened. It takes a lot of energy to be hypervigilant, which is why when a lot of first responders come home, they're just tanked. And it might not even be because they didn't get sleep. It might just be this extra, it's almost like survival mode. You're in this state of survival mode always, the go, go, go. Even when you're sleeping, you're listening for tones to go off. So you're not fully resting even when you're at the station. So hypervigilance is also contagious. It's contagious to the spouse of the first responder and the children of first responders. I see that a lot in my practice where the spouse becomes hypervigilant around the partner who's the first responder that comes home. And then the kids kind of feed off of that energy as well. Have you guys seen that?
Probably more Steph than me, and I'll let her talk here in a second. But really quickly, I wanted to tell a quick story. If anybody has known or talked to first responders, I guess I'll just speak for firefighters. When you said that you're always listening for tones, even when you're sleeping, after a couple of years being a firefighter, I'll bet you every single one of them has this same story of saying, at 2 a.m, we got a call and I was awake before the call dropped. I knew it was coming and it just happened. And it's the weirdest thing. But if you break it down psychologically, you're kind of always not actually totally sleeping, even at 2 a.m. when there's nothing else going on. So I think that's where that comes from. But I thought that was great insight. So I wanted to touch on that for just a second.
Yeah.
When it comes to kids and coming home, so we had to do, I didn't realize I was doing it, but it was like, therapy taught us there's two sides. There's either the military dad or the Disneyland dad. We had the military dad where things needed to be a certain way. And it really hit me in the face when I get hypervigilant when he comes home, and I want to validate the fact that we appreciate him. And so I would make sure and kind of go above and beyond and make sure things are orderly. Mm-hmm. I noticed, in fact, our youngest son is a fireman now. And I noticed he was our youngest, and he would take his medications. He was taking some meds short term, and he would line them up in order of size. And I was like, oh, we're not going to do that. We're not going to create that. So that was a big shift for me of we all need to kind of be okay in who we are. And that started like this pretty big ripple effect of let's get some good, how can we all be healthy in our own space?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And when you think about the brain and how the brain maps certain areas and spaces of our life, think about the place that you're most at. So for firefighters, it's the station and home usually, right? And sometimes it's more station than it is home, depending on, fire season, what kind of firefighter you are. Yeah. And so the brain takes that and maps it out and says, this is a form of safety because this is home, even though it's work and it's not. So what happens is with that transition and what you noticed in your son is that the brain says, well, this is how we do things here. So then it takes that and tries to apply it at home. And I see this a lot with couples where I a lot of times hear the wife or the spouse of the first responder say, my husband comes home and he treats me like I'm a fireman underneath him. Or he comes home and he wants to problem solve everything because A plus B equals C at work. But at home, I just want to be listened to. I don't need you to solve all the problems. That's where that shift is so important. And I'll give I have a lot of tips for that as we, get into this topic a little bit more, but hypervigilance is definitely the start of it and what causes that, unbalance and the difference between being at work and being at home. Now, if you're listening and you're saying to yourself, I don't have that. I'm the same as I am at work as I am at home. I'm going to have to say that you're probably hypervigilant all the time and you have no self-awareness.
That's not what I thought you were going to say. I thought you were going to say you're just not self-aware, but that's very interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly. You're not self-aware. And I mean that with love. And I've had to point that out to some clients of, yes, you are the same person, but there's no way you do your job on the same personal, relaxed level that you're at home. There's no way. There's some kind of like ramping up that you do in order to do the job you do. So it's important to kind of really show that that's a thing. I've heard a lot of first responders, I think probably the ones that are more, against mental health, and there's still a stigma there and like, wow, this was never a thing, 5 years, 10 years ago. It's always been a thing. We've just never talked about it. So it is a thing. As a therapist, I see it all the time. I've seen it as a daughter and I've seen it as a partner of a first responder as well. So do we want to move into tools now? Does that sound?
Yeah, let's talk about when we should start that transition from, what do we call it? Work brain and home brain. And we've heard, 18 hours or something like that?
Yeah, the 18-hour brain.
Yes. Yeah. So maybe talk about when that transition starts in a healthy way as the first responder, and then as the spouse at home waiting for them to get home, or the kids or prepping. And go ahead, I'll let you talk on all that stuff.
Absolutely. Yeah. There's little things you can do to start to I call it like warming up or defrosting and then heating back up again. So the defrosting period, it needs to start happening as soon as you get off your shift. There are some things you can do before you get off your shift. And this is big on communication. I know that Maggie talked a lot about communication, but if I can touch on one area when it comes to this is, I call it checking the temperature. And it's very important that first responder partners do it, where you check in with your partner at home and say, hey, I like to do it at like a battery level. I'm at 80% right now coming home today. And my needs are this, this, and this, right? So your needs, the top of your needs might be, I need to rest for an hour, 30 minutes, or the top of your need might be, I need to get a workout in, or the top of your need might be, I really miss the kids. I would love to do something as a family, or I would love to be intimate, whatever your needs are. And then it's very important that it's not one-sided, because a lot of first responder relationships are one-sided, and I can circle back around to that too. What needs to be both of your needs. The partner at home, it's important that you're also checked in with, where you say, okay, well, I'm at a 30% battery level, and my needs are that I need some quiet time, or, that I would like to go get a workout in, or that I would really love some quality time with you. So that's something you can do prior to getting off towards the end of your shift. Before you do that, you got to check in with yourself, which I think is not something we naturally do. We go, go, go. We don't stop and go, oh, where am I right now? So checking in with yourself and saying, okay, what are my needs? What do I need? What percentage am I at? And then checking in with your spouse and asking them where they're at too. That's a good start.
Yeah, I like that. I have a little under an hour commute, and I feel like sometimes that helps a lot with being able to check in with myself. And then Steph knows when I'm walking out the door, I don't call yet. Maybe I'll send her a text, hey, I'm on my way home or something like that. But yeah, that's cool. One of the things Maggie said that I really liked too was physically washing your hands or washing work off you to help switch that switch that you're talking about off, which is kind of in the same realm of what you're talking about, I think. Mm-hmm. So do you want to talk about this before we move on? Because my next thing is going to be what happens when those two don't align between the partners. Yeah. When I'm saying I need a break and she's saying she needs a break.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I have the answer. But yeah, Steph, did you have?
So one of my, in fact, I was going to ask you about this later. One of my top mentors is like Brene Brown.
Love her.
And the way she talks about how to communicate with each other. And this is perfect. Like to go inside first, check your temperature. What are you at? And then to be able to communicate that, what are you at? I love like name your top need, because if we love each other, we're gonna want to fulfill that top need. Maybe not top 10, but I like how you said just that top need, and to be able to feel validated.
Stop trying to read each other's minds and stop trying to make the other person read yours. I think that's a huge part of it too, is just be honest with yourself and then be honest with your partner.
100%. I think that's one of the fatal flaws when you've been together for a while is, they are an extension of myself. So they know me. They know what I need. No, we're always changing. And that's why it's so important that this isn't a one-time thing, that you're continually having a practice of checking in, because you're going to be different every time for both of you. You might feel burnt out. You might feel energized. It's going to be different every time. So what happens if you're both tired and your top need is that you both need a dang break?
Yeah. And I'll say also that it is not natural from where I came from growing up, and as what I would consider a machismo guy, to look at your wife and go, this is what percentage I'm at, and this is what my needs are. And even though that's unnatural, it doesn't make it wrong. Put yourself out there and just do what needs to happen for your relationship. So that's my soapbox. Go ahead. And where do we go from our needs our needs are the same. And if I say 80% and she says 70, do I win?
No, it's not a competition. And I love what you said. I mean, I like to say that I specialize in the crusty, crunchy first responders. That's typically who I see are the guys who are with me because they know they've hit rock bottom, or their wife is making them come see me. And they come in and they're so crabby and they act like they hate my guts. And it usually takes me about 50 minutes with them. And I've made enough, sideways humor and dark humor to connect and go, hey, listen, we're going to make the best of this. So I speak that language of questioning things and not being super like, that's not something we ever talked about prior. So if you're both needing the same needs or you're both at 30%, this is where compromise comes in. And compromise is a huge part of a healthy relationship. To be able to say, okay, so you're at 30% and I'm at 30%, and your need is that you need a rest, and my need is that I need a break from the kids. How do you problem solve? And this is what's huge, and what I would say really is a marker of a successful relationship is if you're able to compromise and problem solve well. And that doesn't mean not arguing and not fighting. Fighting and arguing is a healthy part of a relationship if it's done well. So doing it well would look like, okay, so what are our options here? Can we call an in-law to watch the kids so that you can get a break and I can take a nap, or a babysitter? Or can we compromise, and say, maybe Steph goes, well, I am very tired. I need a break from the kids, but why don't you take a 30-minute rest and then we'll switch places and, I'll have a 30-minute break, something, in order to work together. It's not going to be perfect. It's not going to be ideal, and it's never going to be fair. I think that that's the hardest thing is we're always tit for tat. Like, it needs to be fair. It's not going to be fair a lot of the times. It's about compromise.
That's a great point. Get off the fact that we're looking for fairness. We're looking for just a good relationship, and it'll go back and forth.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll say compromise and compassion towards your spouse, and just kind of realizing that neither one of you had the day off. Because I think one of the things Steph and I worked through before was me looking at her and going, I was at work, you were at home. It was harder for me. And her looking at me and going, you were hanging out with your buddies at work. I was at home taking care of the kids, right? So I think when you can look at each other and go, okay, there's no winning, there's no harder than, it's just different. And you need to look at each other and start with compassion for each other, I think, too.
100%. That brings me back to what I had mentioned prior, where a lot of times the first responder gets put on a pedestal. I ran about 3 years of first responder partner groups. So similar to what Maggie's going to start doing, I was running, groups over telehealth for just the partners of first responders. And that was one of the biggest things that I was hearing is, oh, well, he works such a hard job. And like, I know I'm burnt out and tired, but I don't want to say anything because I need him to have rest. Yes. But also you are important and your needs are important. I am big on partnership and equality as far as a relationship goes. We all have our own roles in the house, absolutely, and in the family. But as far as working together, both your needs are important. So that just popped up in my head as you were saying that too. I saw you both nod your heads.
Oh, such a good point. There's been times, and not always, but there has been in the 20 some years we've been together where I'm like, gosh, I feel like, the circus elephant in all of his glory. And here I am just making sure the poop gets scooped up and like, yeah, I'm still here. But, just such a smaller part. And that's been fun navigating how to elevate each other, which elevates the relationship.
Yes.
And I'll go right back to where we said you have to communicate what your needs are and be honest about that. Because I think Steph and I at one point were going, oh, no, you first, right? The other way of like almost the martyrdom of I can take on some more. You take your break. And she'd look at me and go, oh, no, you're the first responder. You take the first break, right?
Yes.
So, and that never ends well either. Like, they've got to be honest with each other.
That was our dance. That was totally our dance. I know we had done some similar training together, and I was like, I know where you're coming from. You go, my love. And I was like, what? Just relax.
Yeah, be real.
The compassion, though. The compassion for each other is definitely there. But yeah.
See, now it feels like a therapy session because I see the love for each other. Yeah, that's good.
Yes, but having... being able to communicate very straightforward and just saying, and I think that's why I like that it can be over the phone or over text sometimes, because so the first responder, we haven't even left the station yet in my head. This is, so the first responder is still checking in with themselves, checking in with their partners checking in with themselves, they're communicating. I like that you mentioned you have a commute. So not all first responders or firemen have a commute. Some of them live right around the corner from their station, which I think is more challenging. That commute is actually beneficial because during that commute, you could call someone and offload if you wanted to. You could listen to music or you could sit in silence, and it's going to be different every shift that you get off depending on what your needs are. Now, when you come in the door, I like how you mentioned what Maggie had said about washing your hands. Uniform off in the shower. That's typically the go-to because you're doing that like physical washing of changing personas. So you're coming out of work, Jason, and you're going into home, Jason, right? Yeah. So
that's great. Yep.
Yeah. So having a routine is really helpful. Some people like to exercise when they get home. It depends on what time you get home and how you feel. Have you ever heard of the stress cycle or finishing the stress cycle?
Nope.
Okay. There's a book, it's called Burnout, and it talks about finishing. I'm pointing to my bookshelf because it's up there.
Believe it or not, I have heard of burnout, but go ahead.
It's up there. She talks about the stress cycle that we have, and the book is not specifically for first responders, but it very much so relates. In general, as humans, we all have a stress cycle, and it's important that we do different activities to close our stress cycle at the end of the day. Now, if we don't close it, then we're forever in it. We're stuck in that stress cycle. So things that can close the stress cycle are exercising, going for a walk, taking a shower, getting out of your uniform. These are all really good routines to have when you're coming from work going into home. The next part of this is expectations. So this can go on both sides for the first responder as well as the first responder partner. I'm going to go to the first responder partner though, because I haven't touched over there yet. As the first responder partner, you most likely have some kind of expectation or have in the past had some kind of expectation of what is going to be coming through that door. Now, the check-in really helps with this because you have more realistic expectations, but I see a lot of rejection that happens and a lot of resentment that happens when the first responder partner is saying like, oh, I'm ready for Disneyland dad to come in the door and be like, kids, wife, I missed you and I can't wait to listen to everything. And, all the things that we're excited to share being at home, because a lot of times you might be at home with just your kids and you've had no adult interaction, or there's all these things you want to tell your partner, but you saved it because you try to minimize that kind of communication while they're at work. So having an expectation that your partner is going to receive all of that can really set you up for disappointment and resentment and then disconnect. So that is why it's important to have that check-in prior so that the partner at home knows what they're going home to. And vice versa. The first responder might be, my kids are going to run up and my wife is going to kiss me. But then you come home and your wife is on the couch, in her phone, didn't look up when you came home. And then you have resentment and icky feelings towards her. So that's why it's important to have those expectations be realistic and then also have healthy patterns of how you greet each other when you're coming in and out.
So much you just said right there, and it's so relatable. And I think that people who have not, especially couples who have not been to therapy, can get so much from what you just said. So I really appreciate you bringing that to the forefront. Anybody who's adverse to seeking help or therapy and just thinks, oh, it's my partner that's messed up, will immediately hear some of the things you're saying and go, okay, here's some ways we can start together as a couple. So what was the last thing you said? Healthy ways to greet each other.
Yeah.
Let's go on to that. Steph, if you have anything.
No, this is great.
Okay. Yeah. Keep going.
Yeah. So obviously, we can say this outside of the situation, no emotions are involved. We can logically say when our partner comes in the door, we should greet them. If our face is in our phone or in our iPad, or obviously we're busy and we're not going to stop everything, but it's very important that you get into a routine of goodbyes and hellos. Kiss your wife when you leave, kiss your wife when you come home, or hug, or how are you? A lot of first responders, I love this. If they come home in the morning, depending on, what kind of shift you're on and where you're at and where you're coming home. But in the morning, sometimes if it's possible, they'll have breakfast with their wife. And that's kind of the routine of like, this is our time to update each other. And this is the routine of how we greet each other as well. Another reason why that's important is because I hear from the first responder side that they a lot of times feel like they're on the outside of their family, just living out of a bag. And this can create a lot of feelings of, oh, I'm a burden. It's easier when I'm gone. The routine isn't messed up when I'm not here. The other side of this is a lot of first responder partners, and it's okay to admit this, might say, things go smoother when my partner's gone. I have more control, and control equals comfort for a lot of first responder partners. I can, control the routine. When dad comes home, their routine gets a little wonky. I actually have to make sure the house is cleaner, whatever those standards that change when your partner's there and not there. So going back, sorry, I just went a few different directions. Going back to when you're coming home, having, number one, that expectation is super important. Then how you greet each other, so that you can move forward feeling like you're a family unit and not two people that are trying to reintegrate. Like, that's the reality of it. But for it to feel less clunky in that way. I have this picture. Did you ever play jump rope as a kid where two people would hold and then you'd have to jump in and you'd have to wait for the right timing to jump in?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. Super scary. I don't know if I ever got that right. That is kind of what the first responder is doing when they're trying to reintegrate back into home, especially with kids. It's like, okay, when's the right timing? How do I jump in without?
I love that you're doing the hand thing with the jump ropes too. Yeah. I remember that. Okay.
Yeah.
Great visual.
Yeah.
That's such a great visual.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. Yeah. So those are very important things. How you greet, what you expect. I also like to take it a little bit further and say that mapping out your days off can be really helpful, because I think a lot of first responders and partners get overwhelmed, number one, with a list of things, because a lot of first responders are doers. So it's really funny when I talk to first responders in therapy and I'm like, oh, what are your plans for your days off? Well, I'm going to cut the grass, fix the shed. My wife asked me to do this, take the kids, like all these different plans. And those aren't bad things per se, but I like to encourage them to split up their days between wants and needs. So the things that need to get done and the things you want to get done. And then you can say, okay, day one are things that I want. I want to sit. I want to spend time with family. Day two are things I need. I need to fix this for my wife or whatever it is, right? And being able to, or even just splitting it up half the day. Half the day is wants, half the day is needs, so that you can incorporate self-care in and refill your cup before going back to work and not kind of going from one job to the next.
Okay, this is Joe. We're going to take a short break from this episode to talk with Natalie Yanez and David Eisenhower from SoCal Edison. Welcome, Natalie and David.
Thanks, Joe. Thanks for having us.
Thanks for coming on. And maybe you want to take a minute to just introduce yourself, who you are, and what your role is there with Edison.
Perfect. My name is Natalie Yanez, and I am a government relations manager with Southern California Edison, based right here out of Ventura. I service 9 cities within Ventura and Santa Barbara counties, and also the county of Santa Barbara. On a first responder stance, I am also the AREP for the county of Santa Barbara, and rotate covering both Ventura and Santa Barbara counties. So should there be an emergency, in fact, this week I am on duty, so I would be the agency rep responding on behalf of Edison to Ventura and Santa Barbara counties. So that's kind of my role in a nutshell.
Great. David?
All right. And I'm David Eisenhower. I serve on the media relations team for Southern California Edison. My area of responsibility is Ventura and Santa Barbara counties. And like Natalie, I have an emergency response role as well. I serve as the public information officer on rotation during incident management team activations.
Wow. So during
during incidents, you guys are right there with the first responders and helping to make sure things run smoothly. That's great.
We are
So,
oftentimes, as an agency rep, we may be deployed locally, right? So we are usually somewhat local, but we may respond and work out of the EOC. And Dave, your role is more virtual in that sense, though, right?
It's either virtual or it's at our EOC, which is located actually in Irwindale. But I was activated this last week and weekend, and it was from here.
That's really interesting. So one of the issues, we'll talk a little bit about wildfire in a bit, but one of the issues that our firefighters and their families go through during incidents is that, hey, they're gone for a long period of time. We don't know when they're coming back. We may not be in communication with them for a while. Sounds like you and your families kind of go through a little bit of the same thing. So that's super stressful.
We do, Joe. In fact, my husband also works for Edison, and he was deployed this weekend as well in Mammoth and Mono County. So Friday, he gets the call at about 3:30, and he's on the road by 4. And thankfully, he was able to come home by Sunday. We were able to demobilize that incident management team, and he came home on Sunday. But yeah, between us and some of our spouses who also work for the company, a lot of us serve on these volunteer incident management teams and serve our rotation and get called upon, in times of need, regardless.
Yeah, I think it's important. It's an important to us that we're here for our customers. We're here for like Natalie, for our government agencies and the employees of the company. It's a critical role.
Sure. So Firehouse Roundtable is produced by Ventura Fire Foundation, which, as you know, and as our listeners know, is a nonprofit organization. And we run off donations from firefighters, companies, members of the public. And if you've ever worked for a foundation or a nonprofit or volunteered for a nonprofit, you know that isn't easy. It's a lot of phone calls and a lot of emails basically just begging for money, which is not fun. So when someone reaches out to us and says, how can we help? It's gold. And it doesn't happen often enough. So when it does happen, it's really emotionally and financially uplifting. And that's exactly what happened with SoCal Edison. Natalie, you reached out to me and said, hey, we like what the foundation is doing. How can we help? And it was fantastic. It felt great. And so I'm thinking, well, what might be the best role for them? Then we have the stair climb coming up. I said, well, it'd be great if you guys could sponsor the stair climb. And I think the response was, okay, that's done. We'll do that, which was fantastic. So thank you both for that. And I will add that I just got the report that, Natalie, you have registered to do the stair climb yourself.
I did.
Which it is difficult. I'm warning you. It's not easy. I don't even try to do it because I would probably keel over in about floor 5. But thank you for that. So maybe, Natalie, you want to talk a little bit about why SoCal Edison wanted to reach out to the Fire Foundation and support what we're doing.
Absolutely. So hopefully, as your listeners know, we have a Ventura location here. So, for us, the local firefighters are our neighbors, our friends. We see them in the grocery store, at the bank, the credit union, wherever we're, headed out towards, during the day and on the weekends. I don't handle our corporate philanthropy. I don't get to oversee all of the giving that we do throughout our service area, but I do have a little bit of a say. And so I was working with one of my teams, and we had identified some additional corporate philanthropy dollars. And for me, I come from a law enforcement background. First responders are very important to me. And so looking at, various opportunities within the city of Ventura, I thought the Ventura Fire Foundation was an easy one, right? An easy partnership. We love working with the city. And as I said, to us, these folks, these men and women, these individuals who are out there, heroes in our community every single day, they're woven into our everyday lives. And so I think it was really important from my standpoint to say, this is really where I'd like to allocate some dollars and encourage our corporate philanthropy folks to make that contribution. And yeah, Joe, when you and I were were talking about the various things, and the stair climb came up, and I was like, well, that sounds really interesting. And yes, as of this morning, I am also one of those, when I am 100%, I'm 100%. And I wanted to personally, give and participate in this event as well. So I did sign up. I'm excited, a little nervous, a little nervous, but absolutely, this is, again, we are part of the Ventura fabric, and it just seemed like a no-brainer to partner with the Ventura Fire Foundation and support this event. And obviously, an important event to memorialize and remember what happened on 9/11, and just, be part of this event is just very exciting for all of us. And hopefully we'll have some volunteers out there too, working with our team locally to get some folks and potentially some family members out there too, to volunteer and help make the event a huge success for you guys.
Yeah, that's awesome. We really appreciate everything you folks are doing. Your volunteer person has reached out and said, we'll try to get a team there, which we appreciate. So it's everything Edison is doing is fantastic. As the foundation, our big thing is firefighters and their families and making sure that they are supported. Other fire foundations will raise money to buy equipment or raise money to help when there's an incident, they're all noble endeavors, but we're really focused on the firefighters and their families. And increasingly, that means focusing on mental health and the folks at home when the firefighters are off or on duty or off on a strike team. And, because we're in California, that often means wildfires. Wildfires are, of course, physically dangerous and taxing for the folks responding, as you well know. But it's also really emotionally taxing and very difficult for the folks left at home who are, wondering, when is their firefighter going to be home? Are they okay? Maybe they're out of contact for hours or days at a time. It's very, very stressful. So we're, from our side, working to make sure that the firefighters and their families are, have a plan, are prepared for what to do when they are called up and gone for a long period of time. But Edison has a huge role to play in wildfire mitigation as well. And so, David, I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about what you all are doing to help make sure we don't have to deal with that as much in the future.
Sure. A number of things. First of all, when you talk about supporting firefighters and supporting the local area, we're supporting Ventura County Fire as well as Orange County Fire and LA County Fire with the Quick Reaction Force, funding that year round. And that's some very critical aerial firefighting that we could even do at night. It's around the clock firefighting, and that is so important. And it's important to us that we provide that support. We're also doing a lot of work on our own system. So wildfire mitigation is a big focus for us. Number one priority is the safety of the public and first responders and our employees. So we're installing covered conductor, which is basically, aluminum power lines with a coating on them, which make it far less likely that they will ignite a fire when hit by a tree or a branch or anything else that's flying. And we've already covered 5,900 miles of wire in high fire risk areas throughout our service area. We're trimming a lot of trees. We inspect 1.6 million trees across the service area because, as you know, trees can cause power outages and strike fires as well. So we inspect 1.6 million trees. We usually have to do some work on about 750,000 of them every year. And then we also have 7,300 miles of power lines already underground, and we're planning on doing some targeted undergrounding in certain areas throughout the service area as well. All of those are with the focus on mitigating the risk of wildfire.
That's fantastic. So let's, I think everyone has a role to play. You guys, homeowners of, the hardening of their property, and the less that we can have to deal with wildfires, the better all around, for sure.
Yeah, and totally agree. And I'll tell you, it's working. So we've reduced the risk of catastrophic wildfire by 85 to more than 90% compared to 2018 levels.
Wow, that's fantastic. Yeah, that's kind of shocking. So that's great. Anything else on the horizon that you guys want to talk about that Edison is doing that our listeners who are both first responders and their families, and just we get a lot of folks from the public who listen, anything that they should know about what's going on?
I'll just add, as a utility, we're here to partner with our community, be it at the customer level, on the community level, especially with our local fire departments. We work closely with them on a number of things. And we just really appreciate the partnerships that we have, the partnerships that we're continuing to grow. Dave and I are local. And I think sometimes, you think of the big utility, you don't think there's so much, so local. But Dave and I are local. We're right here in Ventura serving the community, part of the community. And again, I'm just going to thank you, Joe, for being so open when I did call you to say, hey, I might have some dollars. Are you interested in them? Really looking forward to this event. Hopefully it's a partnership that we continue to grow. We love the fact that you are supporting firefighters, their families, and mental health. Safety is our number one key value at Edison, and that is situational awareness safety. It's mental safety, psychological safety. It is everything. And we love the work that's going on here at the Fire Foundation, and we're here to support it.
Totally agree, Natalie. I think, being a local and just working in the local office, you could just feel the dedication of the people that work there. There's 14,000 people in the company, and we're all part of our communities. We all live and we work where we serve. So you can tell that these people are, one, dedicated to safety, and two, dedicated to their communities. You can even, you'll see it. You'll see volunteers out here, and I'll echo what Natalie said about the work you're doing, Joe. I think it's so important to support our first responders and firefighters, and you guys do such a great job with that.
Great. Well, thank you so much. And Natalie, I will see you at the stair climb.
Yes.
I will too. I'll be there rooting her on.
Awesome. We need all the cheerleaders we can get. It's no joke for sure. And if you guys want to put a whole team from SoCal together, well, there's plenty of room still. I encourage them to join us. But that's it for now. Thank you so much for Edison's support of the stair climb and firefighters and the foundation. And we'll just continue the conversation.
Sounds
Thanks
good.
so much.
Thanks, Joe.
Thank you.
So differentiate for me between the wants and the needs. Are these things that I'm prioritizing as a want or a need, or how do we figure that out?
Yeah, it's going to be different for everybody. So if I can tell mine, on the weekends, I split my weekend like this, or I'll get overwhelmed because I'll have this floating list of things I know needs to get done, but I haven't assigned it to a certain time in the weekend. So it's just always there. And then I feel guilty if I'm resting because I know I have these things I need to do. So for me, the needs are typically like cleaning my house, projects that I need to work on for work, phone calls I need to make. The wants for me is like, I want to sit on my couch and read my book. I want to go to the beach with my family. I want to have dinner with my parents. That's how I differentiate, but it's going to be different for everybody.
Okay.
I love that. I love it.
I'm going to back up for a second. Yeah. When you said come home and reintegrating, and the one of the healthy things to do is kind of greeting each other and how to healthily greet each other. I remember when Stephanie made a conscious effort to sit down and have a cup of coffee when I came home, and how big that was. And that was a huge part of, I don't even know if we talked about it, but I definitely noticed when you started to, because especially when you have three little kids at home, that takes some planning and some effort. Right. And if you're going to try to make each other a priority and do that, that automatically means there's some effort towards each other. And I think that's pretty cool. So that was kind of our routine. Maybe the kids weren't super little back then where we weren't able to do that. Okay. Yeah. So we talked about greeting each other, and we talked about how the days off are going to go a little bit, right? Where do we go from here? What else do you have for us?
I want to say how much I love, just circle back, the effort that was put there with the coffee, because what it does is it shows the first responder that they're important and that they are wanted and needed in the family. I also think about hyper independence. I don't know if that's something that's been talked about on this. Yeah, Steph. Just clutch your pearls, Steph.
Yeah, right. I've had to really work on that.
I'm super interested to hear where you were going to go with the first responder or with the spouse, because that is something, or both, because that's something that for sure I think you deal with too, right? Where I come home and I'm like, I'm ready to have some time together. Let's hang out together. And you're like, I've been solo for the last 3, 4, 5 days and I've been doing just fine, right? So what are we doing here?
Yes. Yeah. I was thinking more for the partner. I guess it could be for the first responder too, but more often than not, it's for the partner of the first responder. Because for a couple things here, if you are a seasoned first responder wife, then you kind of get into this more sometimes jaded role of, in the very beginning, if you can remember back, Jason, were you a first responder when you met Steph, or was it later?
Later?
It was actually, he wasn't on the job, but it was headed in that direction.
Training for.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's even harder. Yeah. So there's different seasons of our relationships that we can look back on. And if you look back to the beginning season, sometimes there's a lot of anxiety that comes up there for the partner as far as, okay, I need to adjust to this schedule because it's not normal. It might not be something that you're used to unless you came from a first responder family. And then even if you did, being a partner of a first responder is a whole nother ballgame. So it kind of goes against the cultural, these are the things that my partner should be doing for me, and they should be home, and they should be around. I shouldn't feel like I'm a single person. The should and the shouldn'ts are always going to cause issues. And I see them a lot in the beginning of relationships. So if you are to look back there, you'll see a little bit more anxiety. Now, what happens is our brain is very smart and it likes to protect us. And so enough of that happens, you get to a point where you're like, cool, you're gone. I'm going to spread out in the bed. I actually like it. And you swing to the other side of things. So you're coming from anxiety and you're swinging over to hyper independence. And hyper independence says, I do not need anyone. I have this wall up. It protects me. And so if you leave, it doesn't hurt. I feel like I'm hitting some spots here. I see you guys looking at each other.
Yep. Yeah, we may or may not have dealt with that all the time for the last 20 something years. Yeah.
It's so
this is great. Yeah. And I think I think what I just took away from you saying should and shouldn'ts, I mean, I want to write a book, and I'm not qualified to do this, that says how to be in a relationship with a first responder, right? Like, if you think your relationship is going to go the way that the storytellers say but let alone as a first responder couple, good freaking luck, man, because it is so different. I think people who get in a relationship with a first responder need a manual. And one of the things Steph is constantly trying to do is have discussions with people who are newly spouses or new girlfriends or boyfriends or whatever of firefighters in the fire department, because it is such a different relationship that you have to expect right away. You know, it's just going to be different.
Yeah, I love actually the segue, because I created a manual or a handbook for first responder partners, if I can talk a little bit about it.
Please.
And the reason I did is because when I was the partner of a first responder, I remember looking for anything. I don't know, Facebook groups. As a girlfriend, I felt excluded because I wasn't a wife, and everything is fire wife life, you know? I felt like not qualified to be part of the group, even though I lived the same lifestyle. And then also I felt like a lot of the Facebook pages and the Instagram pages, they were a little cringy at times, but I also felt like it was a lot of complaining. And one of the big things when I created my groups and was doing those for a while was, yes, we can talk about the hurts, but we're not going to sit here and complain about it, because there's so many good things that come with first responder families. You are in the honeymoon stage longer. You get an opportunity to miss each other. You're able to be independent as individuals. So many pluses. So I actually created 3 weeks ago, I think it dropped. Yeah, 3 weeks ago. It's pretty new. It's called Thriving Through Fire. And it is a go at your own pace course specifically for the partners of first responders, for firefighters. And what it is they're videos, and there's different chapters and different lessons, and I'll read you all the titles of them so you know what's in it. But each one has a video, and you can either watch it or you can listen while you walk or, whatever you're doing. At the beginning of it, I go into identity as a first responder partner. What is your identity outside of that? Do you differentiate it, or is fire life your thing? Like, how do you look at yourself in your identity? The next part is living the double life between being a single parent and a single individual to being a partner. The next one is self-cares and the positives of being a first responder partner. And then we talk about hyper-independence versus anxiety, like I just talked about. We talk about how control equals comfort. I hear this a lot with my first responders, is they say, my wife is so controlling. I feel like when I come home, I can't place anything anywhere. It makes her freak out and spiral because she needs everything the way she likes it. And that's because control equals comfort. So that's in there. I talk about communication. There's a chapter on when to talk, how to talk, what happens when you have resentment, checking the temperature. There's a whole segment on there. We talk about support in there when no one gets it. What are some boundaries that you need to set either with in-laws or friends or your relationship? I have navigating the signs of PTSD. What do you do if your partner is starting to show those signs? What do you do if they don't want therapy and they're showing those signs? We talk about substance use, what that looks like. It's very common. It's normalized a lot. It gets confusing because they maybe don't use substances the whole time they're at work, and then they come home and they do heavily. So it's like, well, is that an alcoholic? I don't know. And then I have one on, is it a red flag or is it just the culture? And then the last part of this is on intimacy. So it goes into comparison is the thief of joy, touched out when you have children, and communication around intimacy. There's 2 segments on that. So that is the whole course. And once you purchase it, you have access to it for the rest of your life. So you can go back and be like, oh, okay, this isn't applicable now, but maybe it will be later.
So how is that available?
It's available on my website. So destinymorristherapy.com. If anyone is in a place where they're financially just not able to, I had it at a discounted rate for the first week. And then after that, I bumped it back up to $150, which is where it sits now. DM me, message me, email me. I will send you a discount code. Not a big deal. I was just talking to Joe prior to this conversation that it's my heart that this supports first responder partners over at making money. And making money obviously is great. It's part of my business to be able to share this information, but it's more important to me that it's accessible. So if anyone's listening and they're like, wow, I don't really have $150 to put towards that, message me. I'm happy to send you a discount code, work with you, help you find something that's affordable. But I like this because it's kind of the stepping stone between therapy and not. And I think a lot of people the couples therapy is daunting. Therapy in general is daunting. This right here, the feedback I've heard is a lot of partners will go through this and then go, ooh, okay, some things came up for me. Now I'm actually ready to know that these are things I want to work on when I contact a therapist.
You're the gateway.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, I want to say 2 things. First of all, my $1 million idea is already taken because you've already done it. So thank you for that. And you're actually qualified and I'm not to do it. But second of all,
there's room at the table. You're good.
Yeah. So are these like YouTube courses? Are they written out or what are they?
If you want after this, I'm happy to send you, like a trial of it. I can sign you up for it so you can see it. I'm happy to gift that to you guys. But what it is it's basically, it's on my website. So it's not YouTube. And on my website, there's the chapters and then the lessons. There's no works, There's no handouts. It's just videos. So you can listen to it or you can watch it.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
I love it. It's been needed. In particular, your chapters are...
Oh, great. So now you're going to tell everybody that we already have it and you've been doing it and I haven't. Yeah, that's perfect. This is not a winning, losing session, Stephanie. No, I'm just kidding. So, Yeah, this is exactly what I think the first responder community needs. I think one of the things I wanted to comment on is if you're having a problem with $150, Destiny will give you a discount code, and the foundation will probably help you out and cover your cost as well. So email or DM maybe both of us, or one of us can be the gatekeeper for the other one.
Cool.
So
Thank you.
we want to make sure you get the help you need in whatever situation you're dealing with in life. And huge surprise, a lot of that has to do with your spouse and your partners, right? So between your spouse and your PTSD, what do you always say, Steph? You're not unique, right?
You're nothing special.
You're nothing special. And she's not to me, but in general, everybody's going through stuff to keep it family friendly. And there are a bunch of people who have gone through what you've gone through and are here to help, whether that's couples help that's needed with your spouse, whether it's PTSD, whether it's suicidal ideations. There are people who have been through it, and there's help out there. Yeah. So now that we went way off track, I'm going to rope it back in just a little bit. Did we cover what you wanted to cover as far as getting home, reconnecting, reintegrating into the family? Did we make it through what you wanted to cover for that?
Yeah, I believe so. I do. Those are things that it seems simple, but those are things that continually need to be practiced and exercised. And one thing I do want to say real quick before we transition back is that the course, I created it as everything my first responders are coming to session to talk about, all that my couples who are first responders couples are talking about, and then everything that has come up in my groups with the first responder partners. I've taken all of that information and put it together. So I've had a lot of first responders who will purchase it for their wives because they'll say, these are things I really want my wife to know. It's not always just the first responder partner that's looking for that support too. So yeah, just want to close that topic on that note.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And I want to make sure and go back. When I say you're nothing special or you're not unique, it's only to show that
normalizing.
You're not the only one going through this. Yes. It's not like a first time ever. We are all in this together, and please don't feel like you're alone. So that's the only reason I say that.
No, it's perfect. Yeah, exactly. All of these topics, they're topics for a reason because they're repeat. I hear them all the time because again, you're nothing special means that, you're not the only person going through this. These are topics that have been there and will continue to be there. They're not going to go anywhere, unfortunately, because the first responder lifestyle and the culture has its challenges. It's not easy.
So we didn't really touch on kids.
Okay.
Do you want to talk about, is there something that the spouse at home should be doing to prep the kids, or should the kids be doing something themselves to be ready as well as the first responder coming home?
Yeah, it's really interesting too when, your kids get old enough to start noticing that you're gone is really a hard transition when they're real little and just, oh, dad's here when dad's here. When they start to go, where is daddy? Like, when is daddy coming home? That can be hard for the first responder and the wife at home or the partner at home. And what can be really helpful, I really love books for kids. There's, I can't think of, there's so many of them. There's a bunch of first responder books that are really great to be able to read to your kids. Like, this is what daddy does at work, and daddy sleeps at the fire department, and, this is daddy's fire truck, those kinds of things. Also, I like the analogy of this is how many sleeps until daddy comes home. Now that gets tricky, especially if you're CAL FIRE or wildland, because
we got plenty of mandates going around too. Yep.
Yes, or mandated.
Yep.
Yeah, the expectation, just like what happens with the wife where she becomes hyper independent, the kids start to get that too, where they're like, okay, I don't want to get my hopes up. So the counting sometimes can be helpful, but there's the downside of it that the hopes can be up and there's disappointment. Disappointment is not something you can escape in the beginning stages. It's going to be there. And the biggest thing to remember is that children are resilient. And when they grow up in that environment, that's all they know. They're not going, oh my gosh, my life is so rough, my dad's never home. They're going, yeah, my dad's a firefighter. Especially when they get into, the ages between like 6 and 10, that's when they're able to conceptualize like, oh yeah, dad goes, he's on a fire, he'll be back. Now, it's really important for parents to make sure they check in with their kids as far as anxiety goes, because I see a lot of kids that do start to formulate this hypervigilance or anxiety around dad's safety while he's at work. And that's why I would not turn on the news in front of my kids when it comes to fire-related stuff or emergency-related stuff. I wouldn't be like, look, this is the fire daddy's on. I don't think that's helpful. I think that you need to create a safety net around your children when they're at home. They don't need to hear the details of, what dad does that's dangerous. And if you're an anxious spouse, it's really important that you don't carry that on to your children. If you're at home going, oh, your dad should be home now. I haven't heard from your dad. Oh, he's on a fire. Like, I hope he's okay. Let's watch the news and listen to Pulse Point. That is going to create an environment of anxiety for your kids.
Yeah, that's a great thing to bring up too. I like that a lot. Also, one of the things you touched on was disappointment. And I think that's okay, right? Yeah. Like, it's okay to realize that it is disappointing when dad or mom doesn't come home the day that you thought they were going to. And part of being healthy is learning how to get through that.
Yes.
So anyway, I just wanted to touch on that.
Totally. Life is full of disappointment, unfortunately. And,
right.
And that, our hope as parents is that we raise children that are resilient and have the skills to be able to bounce back and go, okay, yeah, that was disappointing and I have feelings towards it, but I can work through it and move forward and it makes me stronger.
And that's super important. Validating the fact that they're going to have disappointments. And what do we do instead of just, dismissing it, validating it and saying, how do you feel about that? And how do we get to the other side of it? And let's focus on what to look forward to. And like step by step, I see it. I'm a school nurse and like TK through 6th grade and see that a lot of just the anxiety of, they told me just to dismiss it. Not parents, but it could be friends. It could be, anybody. And to actually take a step back and go, well, how do you feel about that? Because sometimes when they come in and they talk about a boo-boo, it's not necessarily the actual physical boo-boo, but what happened to their heart. So it's been really fun to validate what are they feeling? So.
Oh, I love that. Yeah. And with little kids, you can go, okay, well, let's draw pictures for daddy. When he comes home, we can, give these to daddy. And then older kids, what are you looking forward to when your dad gets home? Like, what kind of things do you want to do and, hang out with him, those kinds of things.
Yeah, and that makes me feel connected too when I'm at work to share that with me, and I could put that on my, want or need list for when I get home. I like that stuff too. It makes me feel like I'm part of the family, because there has been times where, I'll call home and go, "You've been doing that the last 2 days. I had no idea any of that stuff went on." Right, and it's nobody's fault. It's nobody's bad. It's just that you weren't there, and stuff carries on. So. Thriving through fire. That is awesome. I can't wait to check that out. Before we go, is there anything else, Steph or Destiny, that you guys wanted to touch on? I think we covered everything I was hoping to cover personally. I am super excited about everything you said today. I feel like there is a ton we covered, which we haven't covered before, and that will be very helpful for spouses and first responders in relationships.
Yes.
So thanks for being on. Anything else you want to talk about?
No, I think that was it. We covered it all.
I just wanted to ask real quick, just to get to know you a little bit. Who are some of your biggest mentors?
Ooh, there's so many. And I think that some are just like personally in my life. I would have to say that my dad is definitely one of them. Being a first responder, he's given me a lot of insight from that perspective. And then there's a lawnmower. Can you hear it? I'm sorry.
It's okay.
I also enjoy Brene Brown. I like, there's so many different therapists that I look up to as well. I love connecting with my other first responder therapists. Maggie is a good friend of mine. We will consult together. I will send her, if I have an individual client that wants to do couples therapy, I'll send them to Maggie. And then Maggie and I get to talk about that client and how we're going to work together as therapists. I think that I'm always growing and learning from other therapists around me. And then I'm also really growing from my clients. I learned so much from sitting with my clients, especially my first responders and their families.
That was the other question I was going to ask. When you see yourself in 10 years and growing this kind of Destiny Morse empire, which I love and everybody's going to benefit from, where do you see yourself in 10 years?
Yeah. Well, right now I am hoping, and I'm in the works with collaborating with different fire departments. I'm hoping Ventura is one of them. It's been talked about for my course to be used as like an onboarding for first responder families. So new wives and then also seasoned. So I would love to see my course throughout departments as far as they could go, because I think there's a huge space missing there where we have family day and we talk about, well, this is what you signed up for, so this is what you get. And they might be crabby when they come home. Like, that's all great. But I think having this like tangible take home is going to be something that's important. So I have a meeting with 1805 next week to talk about Santa Barbara County. I've met, with people in your guys' end for Ventura and how to get that implemented and what your guys' funding looks like for mental health. So I would love to see that grow and continue to grow. I have a really cool community on Instagram. I can see that growing into something even, bigger. I would love to write books one day. That's not where I'm at now. I have a really full practice and I love seeing my clients, but it takes up a lot of my space right now. So a lot of my space is just sitting and seeing my clients. I think I'll probably continue to do that because it's my favorite part.
So I'm going to add to your plate, okay?
Okay.
When we talk about when we do orientations at the very beginning where family is in the room and they're going to talk about what your firefighter is going to do through academy. Oh my goodness. Consider being able as Ventura Fire Department to go, hey, families and partners, and then show you and what your course is on and how to get a hold of it even before they get through academy would be a great option, because when they come to talking to families, I feel there's not as good of a connection than when they're just talking about what's going to be happening in the academy. This would be a great support tool to be able to get them on board before they even get their badge.
So let me ask you this. If you were to come do a seminar or instruction for the department, is that you going to that place and giving a half day, 1 day, 3 day thing? Or is that more of guiding you towards your website and your series?
No, I do public speaking as well. I'm actually going to be speaking at a department in Philadelphia in October.
Fun.
Yeah, it's a 2-night thing. So Friday night I speak with the spouses and the first responder, and then Saturday I speak with just the first responder. So I really get to go in on them. And I do public speaking, and especially because I'm obviously that is far away, but it's nice to connect with the local departments because I'm more than happy to block off time to travel to speak. I know we have Allen Hancock Fire Academy that I'm trying to connect with really close to me. And then Santa Barbara and Ventura are just right there too. But I am more than happy to come and speak in person too. I think it's important.
Cool. So why don't we end it with how do we get a hold of you? What's your website? Give that again and all your social media stuff.
Yeah. My website is my first name, Destiny, Destiny, and my last name, Morris, Morris, and then the word therapy. So DestinyMorrisTherapy.com. And then my Instagram is on_being_resilient. I check my DMs often. You can always get a hold of me there. My email is on my website. So is my Instagram handle is on there too. And then the course is also on my website, but there's more information and videos on it on my Instagram.
Cool. And I'm sure we'll link the all of the ways to get a hold of you in our show notes as well. Destiny Morris, thank you so much for being on with us. It's been a huge learning session for me as well as Steph, and I'm sure all the people listening. So thank you very much. We appreciate your time.
Yeah, thank you for having
me. What a cool podcast. I thought Destiny was very insightful, and it was actually felt very much like a therapy session that we kind of went through with her. And I'm hoping that we gave some ideas to some other couples who are listening on how to reintegrate back into your house after a shift. And man, she had some really good ideas. I'm going to give you kind of my routine, or maybe it's best practice routine that I'm not great at, but I'm still trying. So first, what I heard her say was defrost, right? So you're going to kind of defrost from the shift before you're leaving work. Then I think it's really important to send your spouse a text saying, hey, I'm on my way home, or I will be leaving soon. Calling home on the way home and checking the temperature and saying, where are you at? And letting her know, or your spouse know specifically where you are at as far as energy levels, what you're hoping to get from your spouse on both sides. Then when you get home, greeting your spouse, how that goes, healthy ways to do that. Washing work off, whether that means physically, mentally, taking a shower, washing your hands, and then sitting down and reintegrating with your spouse. So have a cup of coffee, have breakfast, and then talk about what are your wants and needs for your days off. So I know that's kind of a lot, but that's kind of a summary of what I heard from her, and all of those things. Just by doing that, you're doing some self-care and you're taking care of your family and your spouse as well. So thanks for listening to me summarize what I heard Destiny say in that podcast. What did you think, Steph? What did you think was something that your takeaways are?
Yeah, I think it's really important to get honest on what your energy level's at and have that conversation with your coming home spouse of, hey, I'm at 25. Hey, I'm at 80. Okay, I got this. Expressing your needs versus wants and integrating both of those. Just having those good communication and getting honest with where you're at. She does a Thriving Through Fire course that is available through her website, as well as a link in the bio. But yeah, just having, whether you're brand new or whether you're like us and are 20 plus years on, her information and her course, really helpful no matter where you're at in your career. Really helpful. Really appreciate Destiny coming on with us.
Yeah, that was great to have her on. DestinyMorrisTherapy.com is how you can find out more information about her. And we'll have a link to all of her material in the show notes. I'm sure we'll be doing more with her in the future. I'm sure we'll be doing more of these soon.
Rock on.